Good morning, and welcome to Colorado Mesa University's Safe Together, Strong Together weekly update. I'm John Marshall, co-chair of our effort, joined by the talented colleague and partner in this whole thing, Dr. Amy Bronson. We are coming to you this morning with an update, and a couple of key partners of ours are going to join us this morning, and we're sure pleased to do that. At the outset, I just remind you that Colorado Mesa University abides by the governor's mask order, and anytime we're inside, we're doing that, but for the purposes of this production. So we'll remove them for the production and then head into put these masks back on when we're done. I need to give you an update this morning for those of you parents and students, faculty and staff. Shortly, President Foster is going to send out a notification that alerts the campus that we are moving up our timetable by a few days to ensure student safety, that students get a negative test result on their way back to their families. And this is really a twofold move. One is to ensure that students return back to their families safely and with a negative test just as they arrived in August. The second element is we know that our community partners who've been such amazing co-laborers with us, have been there for us at every step. We need to be there for them. And this is a tough time for Mesa County. And so this moving the timetable up to give our students negative tests will allow us to turn over our mass testing site to our community to improve capacity and allow for additional tests for our community. This was a challenging few days and few weeks, and I think everyone needs to know that our data has been just an amazing accumulation of work by so many people, and what it's allowed us to do is bring a surgical level of analysis late into the wee hours of last night and into this morning, really looking at this broad tapestry to make decisions that we planned for many months back. It's one of the strengths of our Safe Together, Strong Together plan is that we knew from the outset we needed to be ready for a lot of scenarios. And so rather than a knee-jerk panic response, what you're going to see over the coming days is a careful and orderly move to help students get negative tests who've not received one in the last few days and complete their coursework here remotely. So, Dr. Bronson, we know this week we will likely see a doubling of our test results and positive cases. And while we haven't published that data until tomorrow, which we'll do to ensure accuracy and precision as we do each week, we know that data is going to increase. So if I'm a parent sitting here today, I have a student who's maybe tested positive or had an exposure, I'm coming up on the Thanksgiving break, what do I need to know?
Yeah. So we have really been thinking strategically about what are travel plans, and you probably heard us last week talking about travel smart. Let's start planning for traveling now. And I really feel like this move is really going to give us the opportunity to really allow and expand not only our testing, but for students to really start thinking strategically about how they can keep themselves safe, as well as family and friends at home as they travel. So really thinking about those that are already in isolation or quarantine, we've actually created an FAQ on our travel website that's going to actually help students make decisions on when do I need to isolate, how long do I need to quarantine, and how does testing fit into that strategy. So I think the really important piece is thinking about if I've already tested positive or I have a high-risk contact exposure, we want you to stay here on campus until you finish that, and we can know that you're going home with a negative test result. So that's really important. So thinking through that strategy is going to be something we're going to help and hope that you're empowering your student to do, to think thoughtfully about that. The other piece is just thinking smart about travel.
Yeah.
If you're going to be traveling on an airline and you've recently tested positive, there's going to be other things that you need to do and to ensure that you can travel safely. And also thinking about if you are going to choose to travel home, just thinking also about what that means for your family and potential exposure, and continuing that quarantine once you're at home to ensure that you're not potentially spreading that to your family or friends.
We know over the last week our acuity has been very, very low among students as it is nationwide. But that really doesn't speak to the fact that we have grandmothers and aunties and all the folks that are at more vulnerable or high risk exposure. And so it's really, we've spent this semester talking about protecting the Mavely,
That's right.
which we're going to continue to do over the next 10 days. But now we all need to be thinking about how we protect our families as we return to them safely. So this really is a move, while, it's really only moving things up a few days.
That's right.
The strength of this Safe Together, Strong Together plan has been that the data collection and the focus on metrics and analysis and planning has really allowed us this careful, surgical, precise ability to change things in real time.
That's right.
Based on the data, not based on gut instinct, not based on guesses, but really based on data.
Yep.
And so you'll hear more from us in the coming minutes and hours from President Foster. There's a parent teletown hall tonight at 5 o'clock where we will do sort of that talk radio format so you can continue to get questions answered as well as in this format. So parents, if you have questions, safety@coloradomesa.edu is the email. You can send one in the chat here. We'll respond to you. And of course, you can always reach out to us and call and jump on that call tonight. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to get your questions answered, which we know right now, this is one of those moments where we want to be communicating often and well. So, Dr. Bronson, we have a couple of folks here today. We think about the strength of this partnership that we have had with so many folks that have helped us get here. I think in deep humility, we have recognized from the outset we do not have all the answers, but we are stronger when we bring a lot of smart voices to the table. And so I wonder if you might help us introduce our first guest this morning.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to bring on one of our strong advisors that has been not only in the advisory role and really helping us understand what a safety plan really needs to look like, but has been in the boat with us and rowing and willing to put in resources and time to make this plan stronger. So it is, with so much pleasure that I get to introduce Dr. Pardis Sabeti, who's joining us via Zoom from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thank you for being here. And thank you for everything you and your team have done to support sort of the process and the planning here at CMU. You know, Dr. Sabeti, you have completed your undergraduate degree at MIT. You're an Oxford scholar, completed your medical graduate degree. What is it about CMU with all these credentials and sort of your history in all that you've been able to accomplish? Why did you choose CMU to partner with and to be a part of our planning process?
It's easy, Amy, and John. I mean, just looking at you, looking at this event, I think the one thing as a professor, your job is really being a talent scout, of seeing true talent, seeing what is all of the pieces for magic to happen. And I think the moment that to you, I was hooked. But just for your students, I'm in a lot of contact with a lot of your students, and there is a community and a culture and just a talent base, a spark, I would say. Like, I look for that spark, and you have it. This is a really special community, and I'm really grateful to be part of it. There's really honestly nowhere else I'd rather be. And I say that loving my Harvard students, loving the students at MIT here that I also teach. But this is a special moment in what you're trying to create, and I'm immensely proud of you of how far you've gotten. And we knew this was a risk that could happen. We in fact anticipated every piece of it, and we're all across the country. I think if you look at the map, the entire map, map is bright red. We're seeing the same issues here, but we are learning together. We are working together. We are trying to create the community that we need and the trust and loyalty and support that we need in the community to be strong. And every part of this is difficult, but you need leaders like the two of you that have the respect of the community around you to be able to work in this.
So you are not new to this world. You have been sort of a leader in response to pandemics, and maybe just giving the audience here, we know a lot about you, but maybe give the audience here, what is a computational geneticist, and what does that mean in the work that you do, not only in your research and in your lab, but also in the educational components and the ways you've responded to pandemics in the past?
My title, I guess, if you were to give me a name of what I do, is a computational geneticist, and that means I take data and I crunch it from genomics, and a lot of that data is from both genomics, but also clinical data too, and try to understand patterns. And sort of a lot of my career is analyzing the human genome and then the genome of viruses that infect humans to try to understand how they transmit, how they spread, how we could stop them. That's the kind of work that we do. But it takes us into the field. To do it the way I like to do things, I kind of like to see every part of it. I would say, like, I'm not very good at like simple deduction. I have to go all the way in and be a deep thinker, and to see every piece of the process. And so we work in the field. A lot of our work is in West Africa, and I, go to the villages, and the folks in my lab go to the villages. We sleep, in the villages. We understand, have to understand all the different pieces of the process. And I feel like we get most of our best insights in the field. And so we kind of are working across the pace, developing tools for public health that use both genomics and the information age kind of technologies to bear in this. And so with you all, we've done a couple of things. We work in the diagnostic space, but you guys have been driving the diagnostic work terrifically, and we're just pacing with you on that. But we're bringing in some of the tools that we've built for mobile applications to dashboards to visualize what's going on in real time, as well as some educational tools that help us understand what's going on, and also to bring agency to the students themselves. That we really do believe when it comes to outbreaks, every person matters in a way that you can't say that about our elections or our climate change that much, like in the sense of like if you recycle or don't recycle, there's a certain impact on climate change, but in an infectious disease, one person can launch an outbreak and one person can stop it. And so we really do truly believe in the power of each individual in this, which I think is another place where my group and your team are aligned, and why this has worked well.
Love that. I remember early on in a conversation, you said, this year at CMU can be a more than year, not a less than year. And I think a lot of people in their college experience were looking at this as, well, just another year, I can kind of roll through school. And you really came at it saying this can be a more than year. And I think that fired up many of our students across our campus to want to learn from, not just what they're going through, but from what they can during a pandemic. And maybe talk about one of the cool things that your team brought to campus in Operation Outbreak.
Oh yeah, sure. So in that kind of realm of more than year, this is sort of one of the ways I've sort of defined it is I have an MD and a PhD, and I've spent like a bajillion years in school learning about health. But I learned more about medicine in 4 months after I was in a near fatal accident where I shattered my pelvis and knees. And I can stand up and you'll see, you wouldn't know that. I have 36 steel plates in my body, and like most people wouldn't know, and it's because I got really deep into it. I did the education of how does a body work, what do you need to do, at a level that just changes when it matters to you. And I see that most of like the best doctors out there are patients. And I think you just learn when it matters. And in a way, so from that standpoint, I would say, if we can't teach our students about the importance of science and statistics, and epidemiology now, when else would we? When they can be change agents, where they matter to this, and where their classes, their keg parties, their everything in their lives is dependent on stopping an outbreak and understanding how to stop an outbreak, it's when they're going to learn. And so, I think that in that context, this is the moment to capture their attention. So I think that, that's, sorry, I hope it's okay that I mentioned that some of the kids might be having keg parties, maybe they're not, but you know what I mean. Ultimately, I think this is a moment to capture them. And so we spend a lot of time on education, and we have a program called Operation Outbreak that started with a middle school teacher, another one of those sparks also, Todd Brown, a middle school teacher in Sarasota Military Academy, a charter school in Florida, reached out to me after the Ebola outbreak and said, can you engage with my students? Which turned into, I'd like to do this 2-week curriculum on outbreaks for my students, can you advise? Which turned into, I'd like to simulate an outbreak, can you advise? And in the end, we ended up working together on this simulation project where we, Andreas Calubri, another terrific postdoc in my group, developed an app that spreads a virtual virus via Bluetooth on your cell phone. And it allows students to really understand how a virus spreads through a community, and you have all of the data, and you can really investigate it, and you can track outbreaks. And so we played the game with 318 of your students. As it turned out, we thought that a point when a lot of interactions could happen is over Halloween weekend, because people let their guard downs around Halloween a little bit, even if they're not going full out, they might just sort of congregate more. And so we were like, that would be an interesting time to play the game. As a result, we have a lot of interesting data about human connections that are anonymized, and we wanted to make sure the students feel totally secure in letting us know, and a testament to the trust they have. All these students downloaded it and allowed us to track them from hour to hour and to get a sense of how these kind of connections might exist and how it might spread. But also in the midst of the game, they were acting as disease detectives trying to track the virtual virus that was also spreading. And so in times of quiet, it's really an opportunity to simulate and get a test run of what would happen if an outbreak spread. And in times of the event, it kind of heightens and it gathers a lot of information that could be helpful.
Yeah. It's been really neat, I think, to reflect back on just some of the learnings that have already happened as we kind of pivot and, wrap up this semester and certainly start thinking about spring and heading towards optimizing. What are some of the things that you get excited about that are happening at CMU that you see continuing to grow in our response and our ability to have students back on campus safely this spring?
So I'll tell you, I talk about CMU every day to everyone I talk to. Like, I just was on a big call with NIH, and I'm like, let me tell you what's happening at CMU. So I can tell you a lot of things that you guys are doing that is just terrific. I think it starts, I'm going to actually do the shout out to the video because I still hang on to that video. So John and Amy know I was already hooked. They had me at hello. It wasn't like a hard sell. But when they sent me a video that the students made that were, that was our house, and then afterwards the safety dance, these music videos that the community was making, I was like, you know what? That's why these folks will be successful. That's why you'll get the kind of engagement that you need to respond in the right way, because a student that, like a group that makes a video like that has a culture and has a trust and a love, and it truly is a family in Mavely. And so I would say keeping that up is going to be really important, that kind of fun spirit where we're all in this together. This is stressful, but we are in partnership, and we're going to think of creative ways to persevere. And then I would say
that you've been written into the next video, so I think there's going to be a Dr. Sabeti cameo in the next video. There.
I'm in. Okay, just made my day. But I would say that, so there's that, but then kind of what comes with that's sort of the fun and fancy, but what comes with that is the fact that your bioengineering students set up your wastewater tanks, and your nursing students are doing, the collections of the samples, and your coaches are now doing contact tracing. Keep that up. That is what you need. You need every person to be part of it in this collective working together on this, and that those are the people who trust. Like, you'll feel more comfortable if somebody in your community is connecting with you and has that like love and an interest in what you're, in your safety and well-being. And then the other thing is the part about reaching out to your community. And so, you all know that I'm very passionate about this idea of concentric circles of support and attention, and that you cannot keep your community safe. You cannot keep the college safe unless you keep the surrounding community safe. That ultimately you could test yourself every day, but if there's the fire brewing around you, it doesn't matter, it will come in. And so it's very, very important, not just because it's the right thing to do, it's actually the more efficient, better thing to do is to reach out to the community. And so this will give you an opportunity, like you said, being able to switch now and pivot and help and support the community will build that trust with the community, be able to get the tools and technologies that we have out to them, and to create that broader partnership. So viruses are interesting. They expose and they exploit the cracks in our society. They thrive when we start to fight amongst ourselves and get upset. But the way to beat them is cooperation and solidarity. And so I think that the reaching out to the community the way you do is going to be better, not just for them, but for you all as well. And I commend you for that focus.
And I know, Dr. Bronson, you have led the charge in really a lot of legwork to try and figure out how to get our samples sequenced, which I didn't actually even know what that meant until Dr. Sabeti sort of used some pictures and small words and helped me through it. But I wonder if our production guys might bring up that visualization that your team at MIT and Fathom helped develop, that describes sort of how a global pandemic happens and how you can sequence the genome of the various strands of this virus, and how that maybe can help CMU and Mesa County here in Western Colorado.
Sure. So they're going to bring up the team, and I'll describe or.
They're gonna, I think they're gonna show that video you all created, that data visualization that helps people see that. So I think that's running now, maybe.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I'll just say that what's amazing is that a virus's genome is like a little barcode. It is so every organism on this planet, including viruses, which are kind of near organisms, but they're these evolving things. They have a genome sequence. It's the thing that's the blueprint that makes up all their component pieces, but it also is something you can track with time, and you can see new variants emerging on the backbone of other variants. And it allows you to see transmission chains in a really, really like amazing thing. And here in the US and abroad, we're able to use it to understand introduction. So we could get a sense of how many times was this virus introduced into the CMU population? How many different lineages are circulating? Can we get a sense of where it might be spreading? Can we track it? So this is sort of the epidemiology, the John Snow, the disease detective, where you can start to say, oh, look, it looks like, what do all these people have in common? They're sharing this virus, they're in this area, and to start to get an understanding of how it spread. We see that it also tracks, you also can start to see if like, oh, there are gaps, like, wait, there's multiple strains and we're missing some pieces. Where are those missed infections that are happening also? So I think from many different standpoints, it adds a huge tool in our toolbox, particularly in our epidemiology toolbox, to get much, much higher resolution on what's going on and how it's spreading.
Maybe a different way to think about that is as we continue to bring these tools online, springtime is going to be here soon. The second semester will be here soon, and we will be stronger, more prepared, and even more effective as we lean into the next term.
Absolutely. And I think it has been such a fun and very, very cool experience, not only for students, but faculty and staff that have been able to work with your team. And all of the tools that we've spoken to that you've given us to be more effective, we're excited to continue to sharpen those and continue to get better at what we do. So thank you so much for taking the time and for jumping on this call and for getting to let everyone else in our greater Mavely know about all the work that you have been doing and a part of. So appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you guys so much, and I'm really grateful to be here. So we will be on many more calls together this week and next week. But for everyone else on the call, just wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Sabeti. We have another guest with us today, and that guest is Dr. Jeff Kuhr of the Mesa County Public Health Department. And I think about all the work that we have done this semester as part of our Safe Together, Strong Together work, and virtually none of it would have been possible without the amazing team that Jeff Kuhr has put together at Mesa County Public Health and without his great leadership. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of what is got to be an unbelievably busy moment for Mesa County. Can you just give us the thumbnail sketch? What's happening? You know, many of our parents are around the country, maybe in the Denver area, et cetera. We've had a great run.
We have.
What's going on right now?
So right now well, as of yesterday, we had 216 new cases, which, you know, every day is a new record, it seems like. Did contact my friend in Boulder, and they beat us yesterday, which is so that's, you know, it's going on everywhere throughout the state. Yeah. We have 24 deaths now, and that's just really occurred. We went from 6 to 24 in just the past 2-week period because the virus has really infiltrated our nursing home population. And then we have 34 hospitalizations, which we are starting to feel some pressure on the hospitals as well. And Dr. Sabeti made a great point, and we have talked about this early on. You know, Mesa County is just in its first wave. And I think we all took great pride in how we worked together to really, we cocooned the campus. The campus helped us do that. It's really been a non-issue. I mean, if we had 6 cases a day all the way up until just about a month ago. So yeah, we're experiencing our first wave of COVID in Mesa County. But I do want to just continue to take pride in the work that we had done up to that point. And there are a lot of factors that are going into this and why it's happening right now. And I know the mention of Halloween certainly is one of those. We kept track of events and gatherings and things like that. So that's where we are.
So Jeff, as I listen to you talk, it maybe a more precise way of saying it is it's not an accident that our first wave is just now happening. I mean, the fact that you and your team and the community buy in, the leadership, and I think about, President Foster's been a key element of this, but the whole business community really coming together to say, we're going to figure out how to lean into this thing. But we are where we are today. And you mentioned hospitals and nursing homes. We've talked a lot about Protect the Mavely, but you did a great job of helping, I think, a variety of young people understand that their choices, in fact, because of where they work and where they socialize and everything else, can very much impact a variety of these assisted living facilities. Tell us about that. How does that transmission occur?
Well, so when we have very little activity, we were protecting those vulnerable congregate care type settings.
Yeah.
And so then we had so much transmission, but there was some fatigue that went along with this. We went so long, and it would offend me. People would write back, or they would complain that an event wasn't being held, and they would say, this is a non-issue in Mesa County. And, the one thing that I feel good about is our foundation in epidemiology at Mesa County Public Health. Many local public health agencies are run by people who are program coordinator by experience. My background is in epidemiology. We have 3 epidemiologists, we have 5 lead investigators, and then we've got that's gone way up in the past few days. But then, we've always had a good core of contact tracers, and we've kept the transmission at bay by just completing every investigation within 24 hours. We can no longer do that. So as it becomes wider community transmission, then you start to impact that nursing home worker. That's a fairly low-paying position. That person is going out, they're participating in the gatherings that are occurring, and anymore there's no, we can't pinpoint. There's no prevention really thought. It's so widespread that we're exposing those people. They're going back, because I mentioned the nursing homes. We have 200 plus cases. Our jail, really, we just tested 140 in 2 pods within the past 2 days. And we've got homeless individuals. We have over 50 of them housed now in hotels to isolate them. So you talk about congregate care, we've hit all of them right now. And so that's what I think we need to try to rebound from. And I've even told my staff, our efforts now need to be into rebuilding that cocoon around them, because it's fairly mild in the community, but also that's given everyone the impression that it's no big deal and we can go out and do whatever we want. So.
You talked a little about your team of epidemiologists and contact tracing. I think about all the work we've been able to do, and Amy, the team that you've led in that contact tracing world. I wonder if you might reflect on that a little bit with Jeff about what we have been able to build together around contact tracing.
Yeah. And it's really thanks to your team, and I think what you brought it back to, and the strength of Mesa County Public Health is the backbone in epidemiology, and they were willing to come on, train, and now deputize people here at CMU to be trained to be contact tracers, which I feel like twofold has allowed us to be very responsive on campus, to isolate cases, mitigate, get people moved. But I think it's become kind of a fun symbiotic relationship that we can take on cases when things are heavy on your end, and vice versa. You guys have been there on the front end for us. As you look sort of down the next couple of weeks of helping to get our community sort of back where we can cocoon some of these places again, how are and what are ways that our contact tracing team can work together with yours to better support that effort?
Yeah, it's a great statement, and it's so true that we have been able to help each other out. Now, as students begin to leave and go more remote, we can utilize your resources, and we're going to do it with testing as well. Because one area, and that's the thing, I don't want to ever give the impression that I'm drawn, that the numbers are hanging me up. They're not. We're moving forward. And so it's about continued contact tracing with extra resources, but it's also with testing. Our testing facility is overwhelmed. Every time we think we've reached the maximum number, we surpass it. I think we did 820 on Tuesday. which is about double what we thought we could ever do. But now, we're going to be able to incorporate your testing facility as well, because I've been out there, I see the long lines of cars, people are waiting 3 hours. We have to do something about that. So, so you're giving us an opportunity to help the community through that process as well. So yeah, not only the relationship with contact tracing and the synergy there, but now the testing part is something I'm looking forward to.
And I think maybe, Jeff, we might take a minute and just address this real clearly at parents. I think parents, President Foster has sent an email to your student and is reflecting on what the next 8 days will look like. And really, I just want to summarize that again in the context of what Jeff's describing. We have been operating a test site here on campus all semester long. And so we've developed some of those skills and those capacities. What we're going to do is scale that up substantially starting tomorrow. We'll run that through the weekend and all next week to ensure that every student comes home with a negative test. And we want that to happen as soon as possible. So what you're going to see and your student is going to see in the coming hours is the ability to schedule a test if they've not already received a negative test in the last 72 hours. Yep. Schedule a test as soon as possible. And as soon as you have that negative test, we're going to encourage you without delay to go on home. We're going to handle classes remotely. As we said, we'll start to transition those on. There'll be a few examples. We're going to be flexible and dynamic as ever in the coming week to make sure that a variety of labs and hands-on courses and applied learning and things like that, you'll see a little bit of distinction. So some of your students might best test next Thursday, Friday. Some of your students may be able to get a test yet this weekend. All in, what that's going to do, again, is two things. One, return your student back to you safely with a negative test result. And two, it's going to allow us to support Jeff, Mesa County Public Health, and really take that scaled up testing site and be able to hand that over to the community to really improve and support everybody here in this community. So.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't give the impression that's happening immediately, because
we're pretty quick here.
We're planning, week out or so. We might get a couple hours a day to begin with, but then as we transition. So.
Yeah, well, we're thrilled to be able to support you. I think it just, we can't say it enough. There's no way we would be here without the support of you and your team, and to be able to build this plan that we've been able to build out. Jeff, as you look out a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to send students back home here shortly with a negative test result. And we look ahead to things like January, where our plan is to fully retest everybody on the way back in. What do you think the next 2 months hold here in Mesa County, and how we can continue, all of us, to be thinking about next steps and making smart choices?
Yeah, I really look for us to start to decrease our daily numbers. As I said, we know where the hot spots are, and so I think that's going to start to happen. We get our community back to where where we've leveled off. We're all doing our thing. You mentioned businesses. We've worked very hard to keep our businesses open. We've got what's called the 5-Star program, and it's a voluntary program for the businesses to participate in. But the governor of Colorado has said, you know what? Rather than close down, we want everybody to do the 5-Star program throughout the state. Well, CMU and Mesa County, we've been a leader the whole time in the state of Colorado. So yeah, we're focused on leveling this back off. That means that we're following up quickly. We've got plenty of testing resources. And then the messaging. I know that the community has really stepped up, because oftentimes it feels like it's Jeff from the health department delivering the message. And
which you do a great job of.
Well, thank you. But I've said this, and it's kind of a funny thing. Before we did this, I think people think that, I've always said we need people to value public health. I think before this COVID ever happened, that we just set up a dentless paint repair or a paintless dent repair, like after a hailstorm, because they're like, who is this public health department? And so, yeah, but, I'm confident that we can level off, put the fires out where they are, and then we move forward. And more cautiously, I think, everybody now has experienced this, so everybody will be on board on what their personal role is in protecting the rest of the community. And I feel good about going forward as we get into, we're starting to do vaccine planning and things like that as well. Got a note from the state last night. So we are planning for that, but that's not going to happen very quickly.
Yeah.
You hit the most vulnerables, you hit your first responders, you hit your medical folks, and the community at large doesn't see vaccine for quite some time. So,
Jeff, thinking about the spring term, it seems to me, and I may be wrong about this, but it seems to me that if fall was inverted to, things getting progressively more challenging, it seems to me that that spring will start more challenging and maybe ease as we continue to grow. Does that seem like the right analysis?
it does. We're going to learn a lot through the colder months because we're going to have to deal with indoors, which we have not had to deal much with.
Sure.
So it's an additional dynamic. So we will learn a lot over the winter, and as we go into a spring semester, we'll take those lessons learned. And to your point exactly, that will be when we start to taper in cases for certain.
We've talked a little bit about the messaging that we would like people to hear right now. And as an educational institution, we love promoting those things that are going to make our community stronger and better. So what are sort of that take-home message that you would love for our viewers and our community to really hear about what can we do right now to continue to think about what this will be like as we come into the future?
Yeah, it really is about us as individuals. We need to wear our masks. I know there are mixed thoughts on that, but come on, folks. I mean, as I said, when this wasn't a huge issue in Mesa County, that was the argument. If there wasn't a reason to wear a mask before, I hope it's very clear why we should be wearing a mask. And then the other things are avoid crowds, and that gets back to anything indoors or outdoors. Avoid closed-in spaces. And then avoid close contact. I mean, think about that, but the mask is the key throughout all of that. We just really need everyone to do their part, and not about us as individuals, but what can I do? I'm going to wear my mask for the community. I want my community to not go into stay at home, and I want to make sure my businesses stay open. I don't want Black Friday to be an online-only event. I want it to be people shopping locally in Mesa County. So let's think about that.
Yeah. Well, we do think a lot about our students as they're heading out. It, as we said, transitions from our protecting our family now to protecting our families. And I think, Jeff, introducing this idea that it's also about protecting our community, people's livelihoods, and others. So parents, partner with us in the coming 8 days. Help your student encourage to get a test and work with their faculty as they transition back home at their earliest convenience. There's going to be a variety of additional communications. I want to remind you all, safety@coloradomesa.edu is an email address that you can send a note to. You can call us at 970-248-1366 and reach somebody to try and work through some of those questions. And of course, Jeff, your team and all the resources at Mesa County Public Health maintained a great dashboard, a lot of transparent information, and I know your team has been available for inquiries as well. Jeff, we so appreciate you joining us today. Your work and your commitment to CMU and the larger community has just been really the amount of hours you've put in since March around here and your whole team really has been something that will probably go unnoticed by most, but I want you to know that at CMU we see you and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and CMU has always been our primary focus, among a few others, but really from the get-go. So I appreciate this opportunity and look forward to moving forward, right?
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Dr. Bronson, I wonder if we should maybe take a few questions.
Yep.
I know we've introduced a lot of new information this morning. I know the president's email that just went out. Maybe we take a minute and try and work through a few of these.
Absolutely. And I think I want to back up to just before we jump into questions. We talked about scaling up our testing site. We've also scaled our contact tracing.
That's right.
Which I think is really important because not only can that be helpful in the decision making about quarantine and isolation and how to safely leave, if you have questions or your student has questions about what to do, don't hesitate to reach out to us at safety@coloradomesa.edu. We know there's going to be exceptions to when can students travel and what will that look like. But sort of a general broad stroke is if you are in isolation, so you've tested positive, we'd like you to finish out that 10 days of isolation. That's really important. We know that will decrease any virus transmission, A, while you're traveling, but B, once you get home. If you are in quarantine, so someone who has been identified as a close contact to someone else who has tested positive, we would recommend that you stay in quarantine and finish that out before you travel. We know there's going to be exceptions, and there are going to be students that want to think safely about how to travel home. And we just want to make sure that you're also aware of what those travel risks are before you leave. So don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We've really tried to scale up so we can answer these questions as we pivot and allow students to start going home and sort of finish out just a little bit earlier online.
Yeah, this imperative of making a plan together is something I think that we want to continue to really draw that point in. And so if you've got a student who's in isolation or quarantine, you really feel strongly about bringing them home. I think we've received these questions right back in August. What happens if, and can my student come home to isolate and quarantine? And the answer is it's going to depend on the circumstances. So let's engage with one another carefully. Let's really look carefully at the facts, make sure that we are reducing at every turn the potential risk to our community and to our families.
That's right.
All right.
Yep, absolutely. I know one of the questions we've been getting is there are some students that are going to be staying here in Mesa County, and some questions about will testing still be available after these next 10 days?
Yeah, it probably bears mentioning. We have had an unbelievable partner in COVID Check, Colorado. They're operating sites all over the Denver area. We were one of their first partners, so we helped them kind of blow the cobwebs out a little bit. But we're now several months into this, and so what we're really doing is operating that test site predominantly for our students. But as we talked about, we're going to slowly start adding more and more hours of the day. And as soon as we can get our students safely tested, that will be predominantly a community site for the next couple of months. But because it is a site that is both here and operated through our systems and so forth with our partners, students will continue to be able to access that site just like they always have, be able to schedule a test using the same link that they always have. And so for those students who, let's say they've got a job or they've had a high-risk exposure or something like that here in Mesa County, they can continue to use that test site right here on campus.
That's right. Yep. And I think it probably is worth mentioning that there are some students that are going to stay here, some that will still be here on campus.
Yeah,
maybe some of
bet.
the support services, food that are still going to be available here on campus.
Yeah, clearly this is going to be a different break. Ordinarily, we have a slightly different arrangement. But, credit to Sodexo, our partners who handle our food and dining services. We have worked through a variety of different things. So it's probably going to be a combination of both some hot meals, some soups and chilies and that sort of thing, as well as some boxes of food that can last students several days, right? Some bagels and some sandwiches and things like that. So we're going to have a variety of those resources. Look, I think we are all trying to figure this out in real time. And the truth is we're not sure if we're going to have 100 students or 200 students. We're learning that information by the hour. We'll work with you carefully to make sure that we're meeting those needs of students as they're here, to make sure that they're safe, that they're fed, and they're getting the care that they need.
Yep, absolutely. I think some of the questions flowing in are about what's going to happen with modifications of courses online versus some of these practical courses that maybe have some things that they need to do in person. Maybe we could just talk a little bit about what this is going to look like over the next week. Will all classes be fully online?
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning of this plan, which is we're going to be thoughtful, nuanced, careful, and really responsive to the individual courses. So as I mentioned before, some of you, your student may be in a situation where they can go, let's say they've got a variety of essential learning courses that are already operated in modified coursework. They don't have any hands-on labs or anything like that. They likely would be able to test immediately and maybe head home. Somebody who has maybe an upper division chemistry or biology student who's got maybe a more hands-on, more labs, et cetera, they maybe need to test later next week prior to departure. So it's going to depend on the course. The faculty members are going to deliver the absolute best education they can, as we all are a little bit fluid and a little bit flexible and dynamic here. So the most important thing is going to be communication with your professors and making sure that you're managing all of those things. We're going to try and be as flexible as possible with residence halls, with testing and the like to make sure that you've got options. But the most important thing will be communicating with your professors to ensure that you're handling both things in the classroom as well as getting that negative test prior to returning home.
Yeah, and really hats off to our faculty and staff who have been planning for this the whole time. Because
That's
as we
right.
sort of humbly began this process and saying, we knew we were not going to be able to keep COVID off campus. It was a matter of mitigation strategies to be able to keep our campus as safe as possible. And we've been ready to pivot, and so they are prepared and ready to do so. So I think credit to faculty and staff, and I can't emphasize the importance of just communicating with them what's going to be the best strategy for you to finish out either here on campus or ready to take off for home
Yeah.
with that negative test.
Yeah, as you're communicating with your faculty, maybe stop and say thanks. They've worked really hard to be operating basically a double course, right? One that's via Zoom and Panopto and distance ed, while they're also delivering things in the classroom, not a simple task. So thanks to our faculty, and if you get a minute, give them a pat on the back.
Absolutely. I just want to thank Colleen for your kind words. This has certainly been a big learning curve for all of us, and appreciate those words. They keep us going when there's late nights and early mornings.
We do appreciate the
Yep.
encouragement, yeah, and recognizing that we don't always get it right, but we're sure working hard at it, and we got a great team of folks that are working to do that.
Yep. So we talked about scaling and getting our test site ramped up to be able to have more throughput, to be able to get a lot more people tested over the next 10 days.
Yeah.
Maybe let's talk a few details. Where do they go if they want to sign up for a test?
Yep.
And the other piece of where is this testing sampling site and how do
Yeah.
we get there?
Well, let's talk about the site first, and then we'll talk about how to sign up. The site is where it's always been, all semester long, what we call little DIA, right? These pointy big white tents over there between Cannell and Bunting, basically at the corner there in the Bunting Hall parking lot. That's not going to change, so we're going to continue to operate out of that site. We believe at this point the hours are likely going to be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day for the next 8 days. We're going to go straight through the weekend, we think. We're going to send your student two things. We're going to send them an emergency text notification to ask them to go check their email and to sign up for a test. And then we're going to send an email with a test, or an email.
Email.
With the test information.
Yep.
That link, which is through our partners at Primary Bio, will be available, and they'll be able to select a time slot. I would strongly encourage them not to simply show up. We're going to be testing a lot of people, and in order to do that efficiently with high throughput, we really need them to select a time slot and do that. And they can do that by clicking on the link that they'll have here in minutes, not hours.
That's right. You know, I think one of the questions we continue to get is, yes, will all classes be online? And I think one of the strengths of what we've been able to do is because of this real-time data. And you talked a little bit about the tapestry of data that we have, and maybe giving just a little scope into what Lookout is. And I think that is helping us be able to make some really pivotal decisions at a very granular level, at which classes and Mavleys may be able to stay in session, have a couple of classes maybe in this final week,
Yeah.
Versus others that we're taking offline. So I think maybe giving the data behind the decision making may help sort of paint this picture of why some are moving forward and some have taken a COVID timeout.
Yeah, I might start, and I don't mean this to be a criticism. I think it's just the nature of dealing with a nationwide pandemic. But I have reflected on the fact that oftentimes across the country and elsewhere, we've seen sort of a meat cleaver approach. I think what we have sought to do is collect a broad array of data, more data points than, frankly, I'm aware of anybody else is collecting, to be able to proceed with surgical kind of responses. We tried to figure out with the production team how to give you a little bit of an insight into that. Unfortunately, there's enough HIPAA-protected data that we just couldn't quite do that. But I'm going to try and describe to you. So in your mind's eye, you can envision what a handful of us that have been working on this all semester can see. And it's really a combination of things like, I can see really quickly if Amy's tested positive, who is in her Mavely, who else might be positive, where she's living, what the wastewater looks like in that, what the availability is for testing, which test she took, when she took it, what her responses were, whether the contact trace has been made, where she's at in that contact, if she's moved, and if she's moved into a different residence hall. And these data points go on and on and on that really are giving us this very unique and really precise window into what is going on our campus, so that we can make not sort of broad blanket decisions, but really dynamic, hour by hour, careful decisions to make the right call for our students.
That's right. And I think it's those strategic metrics when I think about the over 355 Mavely units we've identified across campus, to be able to know what's happening within those pockets of that Mavely and how quickly disease transmission is happening has been really important and really informed our ability to be able to say we don't see a lot of transmission happening in the classroom. And that is not necessarily why we're moving towards going online.
Yeah.
But we do know that that's going to allow safety over the next next 10 days for people to thoughtfully think about traveling home. And we think this is a next really good step based on that data that we're able to see.
Yeah, if we could keep students in classes all day, every day, we probably would have 0 cases. Unfortunately, we all have go about our lives outside of the classroom. Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that. We've had no kind of transmission going on in the classrooms because, we're spaced out and we're wearing masks and faculty have really been conscientious along with students. Credit to our students. I mean, they have been unbelievably great about being compliant with mask wearing and cleaning their desks and hand washing, all the things that have really protected those classroom settings.
That's right. Yep. We're getting a few sort of nuts and bolts questions around quarantining and testing, and a really good question that I think may be for other folks out there, so I really want to address it. If someone's coming off quarantine, their 14-day quarantine, I would suggest that they test again before they leave. Just because you haven't shown symptoms, we certainly know that doesn't mean that you're not positive for COVID. So ensuring you get that test at least 72 hours before you leave is a really great idea. I would encourage folks that once you test, to really make sure that you are quarantining until you leave. So we know that that test gives us one snapshot in time.
That's right, just a window.
That's right. We know it's not a bulletproof. We know it's not the answer to everything, but we do know that a testing strategy is really important to helping make that decision of when to leave. And
That's
so
right.
Utilize that testing strategy and certainly reach out if you have more questions.
Yeah, and I would just continue to say, if it in the middle of the semester, it's one thing, right, with other 20-year-olds because their acuity is incredibly low, their risk for getting significantly sick is incredibly low. But we're now transitioning into sending students back to families where there's going to be more high risk or older or more vulnerable populations. So really want to be extra conservative and thoughtful about getting those tests.
That's right. And I think as we have learned, and I think Dr. Sabeti really hit it on the head when she was talking about the tools and sharpening the tools. And as we think about the future is now, sitting in this place where we are right now, we've learned a whole lot.
My goodness.
As we think about the decisions that we make today are going to impact our future and our ability to come back together, maybe just wrapping us back around with a little comment about where are we headed as we look at the spring.
Well, the wrapping up a few days early, I think, speaks to the strength of this planning initiative, which is we told you from the get-go that we were going to be transparent. We were going to make the best decision. We weren't going to guess at things, and we weren't going to put our heads down and be bullheaded either. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. It would have been easy enough to try and ride this out for one more week. I mean, that is the truth of it. But the data didn't support that. And frankly, the data looks different than it did 3 days ago. And so I think this moment is a good moment for all of us to remind ourselves we're in it together. We're going to continue to stick to our core principles. We're going to be transparent about these things. We're going to be honest about where we currently sit. And then we're going to move quickly once the data tells us to do that. There's really no panic here. I think it really comes down to this idea of we built a system specifically for this moment, and now we're turning those dials and exercising the system.
That's right.
As we think about next semester, we are going to be stronger and better prepared yet than we are this semester. And I think it bears repeating, as Dr. Kerr talked about, as we all test and return in the spring, things are going to get better. We really believe that as the semester wears on. And so I think it's continuing to encourage ourselves in some regards, and maybe most specifically our students, that we can do this. You can continue to get that education that you've always dreamed of. But we're going to have to do that thoughtfully. We're going to have to do it together. And we're going to keep building on the strengths of this plan. We're going to sequence genomes. We're going to test even more wastewater. We're going to scale up and improve the speed and capacity of our testing. We're going to get better at Mavelis and figuring out how we educate and communicate and make sure we're keeping each other safe. All of those things are lessons learned that are not going to be lost as we head into this spring term.
That's right. And transformational education happened on this campus this fall. And I think highlighting and sort of leaving with the fact that there was a lot of students, faculty, staff, and all of you invested in making this process successful.
That's right.
And we can't thank you enough for the trust in that process. And as we continue to pivot towards the spring, we're going to continue to grow our arsenal of tools and strategies to be able to make sure that as we come back in the spring, we're able to deliver on exactly that. It's the transformational education that happens when we can do what we do well, which is small in the classroom and changing lives.
Yeah. We're appreciative of your trust. We're appreciative of you tuning in today as we continue to navigate our Safe Together, Strong Together plan here at Colorado Mesa University, and in particular over these next 8 days. Partner with us, stay in close communication. Please let us know how we can improve. And a reminder, President Foster is going to lead a teletown hall meeting tonight, and you'll receive a phone call. So political campaigns are over. You can safely answer that call, and we'll be calling you tonight to be able to tie in and chat more about this, more Q&A, and hear a president update directly from Tim Foster. So we're excited to be able to do that later today.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us again this week. Stay safe out there, and please have your student get a negative test, and happy Thanksgiving.